I'm Leanne Tran, psychologist who's worked with families whose kids don't fit the mould for almost 20 years. I've worked with children for decades, but I know parents are the real change makers when it comes to their kids. Having 3 kids of my own means I know it's not easy. Parent Like a Psychologist is all about simplifying how you support your kids with psychology information filtered through years of experience to take you from overwhelmed to confident. Come on in. Hello again. It's still school holidays here in Queensland. My gosh, they feel long, don't they? And last episode I talked about chaos to connection, trying to build the connection into our everyday and try and make sure we have that really strong bond with our kids, even when things are going in a difficult direction, so that, they have that safe base and safe relationship with us that helps them develop well throughout life and protects them from things like anxiety and all of that kind of stuff. But it's really not easy. And I think especially when this is a new way for us to parent, or it's different from how we were parented, that can be really tricky. You're kind of going, because I guess I'm babbling around here a bit before I've even gotten to the title, but what I've been reflecting on is how the way we were raised by our parents kind of gives us a template for how parenting should happen. And for lots of people, they don't want to do it the way that their parents did it. And they're trying a new path that's a little bit more aligned with what children need and how understanding how children develop. But because we've had that template from our parents, it can be uncomfortable to do things in a different way, and it feels a little bit weird sometimes. So it can be a real challenge. That's why it's hard to keep calm as well a lot of the time. So I want to talk today about how to be a calm parent and managing your own triggers, because it's the key, really, because I talk a lot about how problem solving is really hard when we're upset. And so if you're upset in the moment when you're trying to problem solve or discipline your child, it's incredibly difficult. So first of all, let's take the judgment out of it. There's always times when we lose it as parents. Um, and if it's a pattern for you, then this is a great episode for you, because if it's not a one-off, it's likely that there's a reason for that. It's something, there's something about the parenting or about your child's behavior that's making it really difficult for you to keep calm. And that's really important to work through, both for your child, but also for you and your happiness and contentment as a parent. So that's what we're getting into today. The calm parent, it's almost like a blueprint, how managing your own triggers. There's 3 parts to this, I think, that are interesting. We're going to talk about the impact of our own parents on us as parents now, and how to develop emotional regulation skills. But then also, I want to talk about some practical things. So, creating a little bit of a calm down toolkit for yourself, because it's really great to reflect on our parenting and our choices and situations we're in with our kids. But it's also good to have some practical things to take forward, I think. I think there may be just a little bit of time if you still want to join me in the Chaos to Calm program, which is launched on the 14th of January. So if we're a week or so after that, you may still have some time, because if it's something that's difficult for you to do, is to keep calm while you're parenting. And, it's really useful to have somebody who can help you unpack a lot of that stuff as you go through it. Because what we do in the program is talk about not just the practical tools and strategies, but also then why is it difficult to put it in place at the time? And we will, yeah, then look at creating a little bit of a different strategy or changing it a bit and tailoring it for you and for your child to help you understand. Yeah, so hopefully if there is, get in touch, send me an email if the doors are closed and you're like, "Oh, I missed it by a day." Send me an email. I'll see if I can sneak you in. So, understanding it's the patterns that our parents have kind of handed down to us, I guess. Parenting habits can are usually influenced by how we were raised. So I want to talk about how that happens, but also why awareness is really important. Then how to reflect and kind of change that cycle. The thing with when we this is how it happens basically. So our parents parented us and they began doing that before we could even talk. And so what happens when is in those times we learn what to do before we've even been able to explain it, because we don't have any language yet. We've kind of just, and we learn things then as this innate way of doing things. Um, in training that we do, it's really interesting to watch some things that kids learn without us intending to teach it. So, for example, and I've seen some examples in my kids of this as well. And when I'm turning, so here's an example, I turn the tap on to hot to, wash the dishes, for example, and then I will flick my fingers underneath like a little wave in the stream of water to check if it's hot or not. And I've noticed that my kids will do exactly the same thing. And then I watch my husband do it and he checks the water in a different way. So my kids have just learned that by watching. I've never said, now, when you're checking to see if the water's hot, you waggle your hand in the stream of water like this, because I wasn't even aware that I do it myself really until I watched my kids do it and was like, wow, they've just internalized and learned just by watching me do what I do. And so parenting is often happens in the same way. So you might reflect now as an adult and think about how there were certain things that you could or couldn't do because of how your parents reacted to it. And those things will be just innate things that you have learned and internalized. And it can be difficult to recognize where they've come from sometimes. Um, and so, how that impacts on our kids and their behavior is that sometimes we can feel ashamed about what our children are doing because we would never have been allowed to do that. So, there can be, we tell ourselves lots of stories about why they're doing it. We can think it's reflects on us as parents because that's how our parents raised us. So there can also be times when we want to kind of shut down that behavior in our kids because we've learned that either, we would have gotten into trouble for that, or it wasn't safe for us to do that, or those kind of things. So those reactions can come before us really being aware of them. So that's where those instincts can kick in, and even if you don't really intentionally mean to do it. An example might be if your child's doing something in public and then you kind of feel so ashamed because other people can see what they're doing, and then you're like whispering to them through gritted teeth about how to stop doing it because you feel really ashamed about it. But that's not really coming from your child's behavior, it's coming from your experience when you were a kid. So I think it's important to understand how sometimes that can change our expectations, and it means that we might have unrealistic demands or expectations for our kids now. um, how we can, I guess, change that cycle, which is often what parents want to do, um, is to think about: are you using discipline that's way too harsh, or do you have unrealistic expectations for your child? I feel like expectations have changed a lot from the last generation to our current generation of parents. And they're a little bit more in terms of that they're a bit more aligned with kids being kids. I know when I was growing up, there were expectations that were almost like children were expected to be just miniature adults, but they're not. They don't have the problem solving capacity. They don't have the ability to regulate their emotions like adults do. So they will cry, they will make mistakes, they will argue with the siblings. And thinking about whether you've got realistic expectations is one really great way to question that cycle and see if it's how you're responding is what you really choose to do, or if you want to change your expectations. And then the things like harsh discipline and that kind of stuff as well has that follows through, and we can almost by an automatic response want to do what our parents did. But I think so I would encourage you, if you're in that position and you want to change it, to think about your job not so much as to stamp out any problem behavior, but your job is to see it and recognize what skills your children need in order to make different choices in the future. And that's what your job is, to help them with those skills and developing them, learning new ways of doing things. Um, and to not worry so much about the difficult behaviors that do happen. It's mostly think about you as your role as guiding them through it, rather than, um, a bouncer that's trying to just stamp out anything negative. How you can do this is by self reflection. And it would encourage you to reflect on what your default response is, or your kind of instinct, and then think about whether that lines up with your values or not. You can do this by just, maybe when there's a time when you've had this big blow up within the family, um, and or some kind of opportunity or occasion to think about. Um, Reflect on what your instinct was in terms of how to respond. Check in with your partner about it as well. Do they see it the same way? Do they see it differently? And then talk about what your values are in terms of how you want to parent your kids. How do you want to talk to them? Um, what That's tone, I guess, as well. Is it aggressive or is it calm? It's also, what words do you want to say to your kids? How do you want them to feel in your home? And use that as a reflection to set some goals if you want to do things a little bit differently. Also, if this is about keeping calm, which a lot of the time it is, if we're triggered about stuff like that, that our children are doing, that brings up our own feelings about behavior and parenting, we need to be able to regulate our own emotions, to regulate our children's. So there's a few things I want to talk about. Mindfulness is one, um, reframing challenges, and then I want to talk about how you can model regulation to your kids as well. The first one is mindfulness. So there's lots of things you can do that tries to bring you back into the moment. And why that's useful is that then you're not thinking about or responding out of that automatic response or instinct, because you haven't kind of traveled back to when you were a kid, and it's almost like you're just acting out how your parents responded. So mindfulness is a great thing to do. If you Google how to do some quick things like the sensory method or grounding, um, you can use that to stay calm in heated moments. Another one that involves thinking about, or trying to pay attention to your senses. So things that you can hear, see, feel, touch. Well, I think I said feel, taste, and smell are the other ones. It's trying to just bring you back into the moment. The other thing that I do a lot is deep breathing. And you can do these too when it's okay to take a break and walk away and think about the things around you. Do the sensory exercise. or to take some deep breaths and then get centered and come back to the situation. Um, the other thing then is to reframe the challenges. So I think it's helpful sometimes to see things in a different light. So rather than meltdowns or defiance, seeing that as a difficulty, see it as an opportunity to teach your kids some problem solving, teach them emotional regulation. That's what can happen with the meltdowns. Um, and then that brings me into the third point about how then you're modeling those skills to your kids as well. If you have a way to manage your own emotions, like taking deep breaths and that kind of thing, it means then if your child's having a meltdown and you've reframed that or changed your perspective to see it as an opportunity to teach them, then you can do that in the moment with them. You can say, I see you're really angry. Take some, taking deep breaths can help, and then we can solve the problem. And you say, I'll do it with you. Come on, and count to three and do the breath in, and count to three and do the breath out, or whatever strategy that you're going to use. Um, yeah, so you're regulating yourself, but you're also teaching your child what to do. And that's what psychologists call co-regulation. It's where the kids can't do it, so you kind of help them with it. Um, yeah, it's so, we think sometimes about parenting that has to be perfect, but um, it doesn't, because the times when it's not going well are also useful opportunities for our kids to learn, and if we've made make a mistake and we're calming ourselves down, that's a great opportunity for them to learn how to do the same. So that brings me to the third point, which is about the calm down toolkit. You might need something for yourself as a parent. So the grounding technique I was talking about before is a great one. And it's you go through the five senses and try to notice things around you using your senses. So, five things that you can see, four things you can hear, three things that you can feel, um, two things that you can smell, maybe, and one thing that you can taste. And so taking a few minutes to go through that really means that you can't focus on anything else. So it cuts out all that chatter in your mind that we're not aware of sometimes, and brings you into the present moment. Doing deep breathing is a great one. I always try and breathe out for longer than you breathe in, because that links to bringing down our heart rate a little quicker. So breathing in for 4 and breathing out for 6 is how I like to do it. Or you could do 3 and 5. I just don't particularly like odd numbers. But it doesn't really matter as long as you're kind of intentionally slowing down your breathing. Some other things that you could do are environmental things. So you could use headphones if the noise gets to you at home. You could use a calming playlist, or you can use something like aromatherapy, or, splashing water on your face. Cold water often works. So just have a think about what your strategies are. Maybe make a little list. It could be in your phone notes, it could be on a post-it note on the fridge. Because if you've thought it through, it's more likely then you'll be able to use it next time. Also, some things that you can do are have some emergency scripts, or these are kind of the positive, helpful affirmations or things to think in your mind in the moment. Um, Actually, no, sorry, I don't mean like affirmations, because I don't, these are ones that you can say to your kids, these scripts. So things like, hang on, I just need a minute to get calm. Or it could be, I need a moment to think about how to help. Or it could, yeah, something like that. Something simple that you can say to your kids to let them know that you're going to try and take a break and calm yourself before you help them. Scripts are always it's good to have a go-to thing that then becomes automatic so that you don't have to do the thinking in the moment when it's hard. And then another tip for not having to do the thinking in the moment when it's hard is to try and plan for stressful situations. So this might be things that usually cause stress, or if you, most parents, I think, when I talk to them about their children having challenges, are able to predict to some degree when those challenges will happen. So it might be going out as a family. It might be grocery shopping. It might be um, just when there's too much on in the day, or if your child misses a nap or something like that, then things are likely to go pear-shaped. Try and have a bit of a plan for those days. And that can be ways to help you calm, ways for your child to calm, so that it's more likely that you can manage these situations well. So, just as a recap, I guess we've talked about um, how those patterns kind of work, why it's important to develop emotional regulation skills, but also some practical tools for it. Um, I hope this helps a little bit in getting through the last couple of weeks of school holidays. It certainly will. It certainly helps me get through the shoe shopping that I inevitably have to do in the last week of the school holidays, because I always forget. But actually, that's a good idea to plan for that stressful situation. I should plan that and schedule that in now. Um, yeah, and just, I guess my last piece of advice would be to um, be kind to yourself about it. Just like your kids are learning, you're learning as well. And so we make mistakes. Mistakes can be learning opportunities. And if you haven't listened to the previous episode, go and listen to that about building connection, because it's okay to make mistakes. You can use it as a moment to also connect again with your children. And we're all humans, we make mistakes, but being kind to ourselves and to our kids, and just trying to change little by little is the way to go here. So enjoy the rest of your holidays, and I will be back with you once school has started. Thanks for listening to this episode of Parent Like a Psychologist. If you found it helpful, please share on Instagram so other parents can benefit too, and tag me at Leanne Psychology so that I can say a big thank you. Head over to leannetran.com.au to join the village for bite-sized psychology tips straight to your inbox. I really hope this podcast has brought a new perspective and you a step closer towards a calm parent and a thriving child. Have a delightful day.